Meet the Lot, native token of Lukki Exchange and the most potential tool for investing this year. Trade now on P2B, B2B and Lukki.io.
Welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here today with our guest, Erik Voorhees. This is a special edition of the Genesis Mining Education Center. So a special edition because it's Oktoberfest time, so my outfit is not the typical mining outfit we wear in our farms in Iceland and the other countries in the world, but it's just because it's Oktoberfest. And for the ones of you that do not know what Oktoberfest is, it's some kind of huge tents, a huge place with a big crowd of people. Everyone is drinking beer, then singing songs together, drinking more beer, having a party, drinking even more beer, and everything is great. So that's the Oktoberfest. And for this very special event, we have a very special, very famous guest. As I said, Erik Voorhees is today with us. Erik actually doesn't need an introduction. He is kind of in Bitcoin from the very, very beginning. So when I joined Bitcoin in around 2011, I already know Erik is a big guy in Bitcoin. And he has not only founded a number of very interesting companies, like Coinapult, he was involved in Satoshi Dice, now is doing Shapeshift, which is also very famous. But he is also a good or excellent writer, speaker, and I would even say philosopher, because you're thinking a lot about money, how it works, and freedom, and so on. So he is thinking kind of beyond the Bitcoin thing and taking it into the bigger picture. Welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. Very good to be here.
Yeah, great. So what our viewers are interested in is, of course, Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency world. There is lots of things going on in Bitcoin, but let's start maybe with the most important things, because sometimes if I go out and speak to people and explain to them Bitcoin, and even some people that know Bitcoin, they think the most important thing about Bitcoin is it's a digital form of money. Yeah, but Bitcoin is so much more. Maybe you can explain a little bit why Bitcoin is so much more interesting than just kind of a digital form of cash.
Yeah, well, the first thing to say is that Bitcoin being digital is not what made it unique. The forms of money that people use are already mostly digital. Mm-hmm. So the money on your credit card or in your bank account, that's all digital money. It's
Yes.
It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by even physical cash in a bank. Mm-hmm. It's just purely digital on a database somewhere. So it's interesting that people's first reaction to Bitcoin is that it's weird because it's digital.
Yeah.
That's not at all why it's weird. It's weird because there's no central party behind it. There's no bank behind it. There's no central bank behind it. There's no government behind it. It is decentralized. So that is really why it's important, and that's what makes it fundamentally different from anything that's happened before.
Okay, yes. And why do you think it's so valuable to be independent from the central bank, for example, or from banks in general?
Yeah, well, so central banks generally print money because it is one of the ways that governments pay for themselves. Mm-hmm. So governments are very bad at spending within their means, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They spend more than they bring in revenue from taxes. And so to spend more, they issue debt, and they still spend more than that. And so how do they...
It's very convenient.
Yeah, so if you're spending more than you have in taxes and more than you can raise in debt, how do you spend that money? Well, you spend it by printing it. And
very convenient.
Very convenient. It's an amazing power if you have it, to be able to print money. Yes. And it's very insidious because if you have the power to print money, you get to spend it before it has changed the price levels of anything in the economy. So if I made $1 million at home and I could go buy a house or a car, and the rest of the economy wouldn't have reflected that increase in the money. But if I kept printing millions of dollars, at some point the supply of dollars will decrease the demand for dollars. And so everyone else that's holding dollars when I'm printing it is made poorer because of it. But if it happens slowly enough and over a large enough market, it's very hard to detect, very hard to feel, and lightning or rain that prices go up.
Yeah.
And they go up because the money is getting debased. It's getting printed by central banks. And if you don't have a problem with that, then keep using government money. If you do have a problem with that, Bitcoin finally allows you to escape it
Yeah.
and to have an alternative.
Yeah, yeah. I think I once read that just in addition to that, that I think the US dollar since 1920 or so lost 98% or so of its value. So
Yeah.
it's really crazy if you think about it. Yeah.
So here's a crazy statistic. So the US dollar was for most of its history backed by gold and silver. When the US was formed, 1776, from that point until 1912, when the US central bank called the Federal Reserve was created, the dollar was relatively stable. So $100 at the start of the country in 1776 would buy you roughly the same amount that it would 150 years later
Wow.
in 1912, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would actually buy you slightly more than it did 150 years before. And then, for a number of reasons, which are a little too nuanced to get into right now, the central bank was created in large part to preserve the value of the dollar, which had been stable for 150 years.
Kind of ironic, yeah.
Yeah, and since it was created to stabilize the value of the dollar has declined by 98% since then.
Crazy. Really
So
crazy.
you can't have a much worse record than that. And it's really tragic that most Americans don't know that. And America's not unique. Every country in the modern world has central banks that deflate.
Yes,
that inflate their
they all basically work the same.
Yeah.
So the funny thing actually is about money, yeah, and what function money is. I mean, it was just there for me, and it kind of worked. Yeah. And then I found Bitcoin, and I was thinking more and more about money, and I understood the concept of money only because I looked into Bitcoin. I think for you, it's probably the other way around. You looked into money and how these things work probably even before Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, I mean, I studied business and economics in school, but I didn't learn either of them.
Okay.
I got out of university right before the financial crisis, and I was living in Dubai and saw the whole financial crisis unfold from abroad. And during that time, I got really interested in money and economics and how it all worked, and so I started studying it a lot. And just a few years after that, I learned about Bitcoin, and I realized immediately why it was so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was the first thing was like, oh, this is weird stuff, and I was kind of maybe I don't need it, and maybe it's kind of something weird. Yeah, exactly. And you can generate your own money, and and there was some pseudonym guy who created it, and it's only digital, and I was like, oh, what is it?
Yeah.
But luckily, I continued reading the article. And after a couple of days and more reading, I thought, wow, this is genius. This is really, really a genius concept. So, very.
It's hard for some people to understand when something's worked in a certain way for so long that a different way might be better.
Yes,
or even
yes,
just okay,
because
right?
you are born into this fiat money system, and for you, it's a absolutely natural thing that the state is printing the money. Yeah, and
people spend their whole lives chasing after money. And, you go to work to get the money.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And to have a different kind of money come out sort of is an uncomfortable challenge to not just the other form of money, but to your own life. The thing that you care so much about is being challenged by something, and that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. And understandably, a lot of people, I think, reject it outright because they just don't want to think about it.
Yeah, yeah. Very easily transferable. You do not even know or have to know where your counterparty is. It's kind of an email, yeah. So it's kind of a very good way of transferring value from one person to the other. It's divisible and so on. So you have all these nice property. What you sometimes read in the forums and discussion is the term anti-fragile. So Bitcoin is anti-fragile. Yeah. Can you explain to our viewers a little bit what anti-fragile mean?
Yeah, so many systems and things that people make are fragile. So a building is a good example. You build
or a glass of water.
A glass of water is very fragile. If it's harmed and the structure cracks or has any sort of flaw in it, the whole thing can fall apart.
Yes.
It's done.
Yes.
Anti-fragile means that when something bad happens to it, it doesn't collapse. And it doesn't even get weaker. It might get weaker temporarily, but for whatever reason, it heals itself and gets stronger. So a good example is like a human immune system can be anti-fragile, right?
Yes,
Sometimes
very good
it's
example.
better to have some viruses or outside influences on your immune system so that it gets stronger because it's anti-fragile. Bitcoin has largely exhibited that property. It has had all sorts of drama and bad things happen to it, and lots of enemies and difficulties. And each time these things happen, it hurts Bitcoin temporarily, but it fixes itself. And
gets stronger over time, yeah.
yeah, it gets stronger over time. People adapt and change and build it. And it's an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, great. When I started and was in the beginning reading about Bitcoin, and in particular if it came to mainstream news, then it was always, Bitcoin is some sort of drug money, underground money and so on. And the focus has changed over time. It gets better. So people and the news understand that Bitcoin is not just to buy something on Silk Road or in the dark web, but it has many use cases. And in the kind of last year or so, the term blockchain became more and more important, and now you can read everywhere blockchain, fintech, bank XYZ, they all want to go blockchain. Yeah, so blockchain is a kind of a new hype. For the understanding, Bitcoin uses a technology which is blockchain, and it's a very important it's kind of the engine of the car. Yeah, right. But Bitcoin still is different from just being just a blockchain. Yeah, it has different properties, and there are other cryptocurrencies which also use the blockchain technology. Why do you think there are so many banks interested in the blockchain, but maybe less interested in Bitcoin?
There's a few reasons. One is that the banks don't see any need for there to be a different form of money. An inflationary fiat currency helps them very greatly, and they are some of the biggest beneficiaries of the creation of that new money, because they see it first, again, before the general price levels have risen. So that's not a problem for them. They don't want or need a different currency. Another reason is that Bitcoin has had this, in many circles, bad reputation as being connected with the dark web and some scary things. And so if you're a manager at a bank and you know that this technology is interesting and important, if you go to your supervisor and say, we should look into Bitcoin, there's like an immediate reaction because he's heard of Bitcoin being bad. But if the technology called blockchain is around, you can go to your supervisor and say, hey, we need to discuss our blockchain strategy. Right? And now it's not about the currency unit, so it's not threatening to a bank. It's not as threatening. And it doesn't have the negative brand connotations that Bitcoin does. So immediately that allows, respectable people at a bank to talk about it and to explore it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot. But they are also discussing private blockchains these days. You can use it like some banks do it to settle something internally between them. Does it make sense from your perspective, this kind of use case, to have a private blockchain?
I think the world of the future will have public blockchains and private blockchains.
Okay.
Private blockchains will definitely have certain uses for certain things, and in some cases will be better than a public blockchain.
Yes.
They can usually be much more efficient, much faster.
Yes.
And certain institutions just will not use something that they can't control each piece of.
Yes.
So they'll have their place, and that's fine, but those aren't really an interesting innovation. The interesting innovation is open public blockchains that anyone in any country of any age for any purpose can build on.
Yes.
This is why the internet became so popular and why the internet replaced AOL.
Yes.
AOL had this huge head start. It had millions and millions of users, but it was a controlled platform that only people could use in certain ways. And when the open internet that anyone could build on came out, it was
like Linux, for example, as well, right? There was a Windows system or DOS system in the beginning, and then something very small and only for the specialized hackers came along, Linux system. And then it became bigger and bigger, and these days you have it on the mainframe computers, on the supercomputers, you have it on your mobile, it's everywhere.
Most servers, most cell phones in the world run on.
So it's always
exactly
this kind of open source system where people can build on the technology without getting into a problem with a company that controls everything.
Yeah, right? And if you think about the value of these networks is from what's built with them, it's built on them. There's no way that a company or a group of companies, however big and powerful they are, can ever come up with enough content or innovate fast enough for everyone to grow faster than an open network that anyone, anywhere can build on at any time. It's not even a competition.
Yeah, that's also a thing, but in some games, people understand that users create a lot of the content, and they kind of even give incentives to players to create additional content for the game. Yeah, so it's an additional value.
Facebook is a good example of this, right? Facebook is hugely popular not because this Facebook company creates all the statuses for its people, people find interesting, is because anyone around the world can post about themselves and update things and contribute content.
Yes, right. It was, as I said, some of these banks are now looking into these private blockchain. Yeah, they sometimes try to build solutions, and I think, as you mentioned, they sometimes have special requirements. Sometimes they even need a backdoor for the regulator because they don't want that the other bank sees what's going on, but they want that the regulator has, or they have to give a backdoor to the regulator to prove to him what's going on. But there's also some banks that are interested in this other cryptocurrency called Ethereum. Can you maybe quickly explain to our viewers what is the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin, and why Ethereum may be interesting also for banks?
So Ethereum is another blockchain separate from Bitcoin, and it is more complicated, and it allows more intricate things to be built on it. Largely, it allows applications to be built on it much more easily. And that's not necessarily better or worse, it's just different. So Bitcoin is a simpler tool, and sometimes simple is better. But there are things that people can build on Ethereum right now, programs, software. For example, Shapeshift is building some new programs that we wouldn't be able to build on Bitcoin today. Maybe in the future we can, but not today. And we can do it today on Ethereum. So we're building on Ethereum, and Ethereum has all sorts of interesting applications being built on it. And so I think it is definitely worth people looking into. Of all the many cryptocurrencies and platforms and blockchains out there, most of them are pretty pointless.
Yes.
Ethereum is one of the ones that I think definitely has a purpose and a utility, and I think is a really important complement to Bitcoin.
Ethereum, I mean, you have the native currency, which is called Ether, but you can also kind of create additional coins on top of it, on top of this platform, which can be used for voting or for decentralized organization or for these things like a prediction market and so on. Like Algor.
Yeah. So just the ability to make new tokens easily on Ethereum is one of the ways it's better than Bitcoin. You can make other tokens on Bitcoin, and there have been projects like that, but they're more awkward. They don't work as well. They're not as flexible. On Ethereum, you can build them very easily, and they work very well. So that's just one example of the way it can be different.
Yeah. So that kind of begs the question, and I know in the beginning you were saying Bitcoin is the one and only thing. Yeah, Bitcoin is the main blockchain, and we only have one internet. And that's what I actually like about you, is you kind of changed your mind. You were looking back and seeing, okay, there is, and you just mentioned it, there is some value also in other blockchains, like Ethereum. Yeah. So, but still the question remains kind of, why do we have more than one blockchain? We only have one internet. What is your take on that?
Yeah, so indeed, I did used to think that there is no purpose in having altcoins. Money is a unit of measurement, right? And the world doesn't need 5 different units of measurement. It's bad enough that we have 2, right? And how horrible would it be if we had 1,000?
Yeah.
So I held that opinion pretty strongly. What changed my mind was that I started to see tokens that came out that were not just other forms of money. They did something specifically unique that broadened the application of blockchain tokens beyond money. So Ethereum is a good example. Ethereum, the token, is not just a form of money. The Ethereum platform does something that Bitcoin does not and cannot right now. For that reason, both of them, there's a good purpose for both to exist.
Yes.
But you have lots of cryptocurrencies, and many of them have no purpose to exist. Like
I agree.
I don't think
Lotto coin or whatever people came up with in the beginning.
It's just a clone of Bitcoin. But it has one little tweak to it. That doesn't justify a whole other network.
Yes.
A fundamentally differently designed token does.
Okay. What about these? There was a lot of talk about coins that are more anonymous than Bitcoin. So in contrast, what people might expect, because I have these kind of addresses in Bitcoin and I don't have to reveal who I am, still Bitcoin is not the most anonymous coin, right? So, and there is a lot about talk about Monero, Zcash and these things. Do you think they have some value? And then can you explain a little bit why it's maybe important to have this kind of feature in a cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so one of the early things that drew people into Bitcoin was the privacy, was the anonymity. And compared to banks, Bitcoin is very private, but it's not perfectly anonymous. And if you don't use it correctly, moving and all that kind of thing. So as the market started realizing that Bitcoin was not as anonymous as once thought, it started innovating again and figuring out, okay, well, how can we make a cryptocurrency that is even more anonymous? And there have been a number of attempts. Dash and Monero are the current best attempts, and they've both improved on the anonymity of Bitcoin. But now we have something called Zcash, and Zcash will come out in about a month.
So that's
October.
End of October.
Yeah, end of October. And Zcash, for the first time, has created a cryptocurrency that it's not just an improvement in the obfuscation of the money, it mathematically anonymizes it. So the information isn't there. Most of the other privacy tokens have just made transactions more obscure. But if it's just becoming more obscure, more advanced techniques can unobscure it. Zcash is actually an innovation in cryptography that will allow truly private anonymous money that can't be unobscured.
Yes. So for Bitcoin, as you said, you have this kind of network analysis you can do to kind of find out who might be the people behind it. And for Zcash, you have this, what you just pointed out, this mathematical zero-knowledge technology, which even allows you, and that's crazy actually, to hide the amount that is transferred between accounts. You're just kind of putting some sort of money in one pot, and then you take out money, and you take out money, and you take out money. And the algorithms guarantee that not more money is taken out than there was in this position or in this account, but they never reveal how much was taken out to the individual addresses. So this is really mind-blowing in some way.
Very cool. And this guy Zuko is the main guy in the project, and he was saying that he's built it largely for ideological reasons. He cares a lot about privacy, and he discovered as he was building it that actually a lot of corporations and large entities they don't like Bitcoin because it's not private enough. So real privacy couldn't use Bitcoin because it wasn't private enough.
So it's not only for the darknet or so.
Right. Well, there's this very interesting alliance that will, I think, occur in the Zcash, where you have the ideologues who really care about privacy. And then you have large corporates who need it for their operations. They don't necessarily care about privacy ideologically, but they need it for their business. Okay.
Very interesting. So Zcash is something where you're saying it has a value in its own? And it has kind of, but wouldn't it be possible kind of to integrate this kind of technology also into Bitcoin?
Well, and Zcash was originally designed as an upgrade to Bitcoin. But Zuko, I think, correctly realized that even if it was going to be adopted into Bitcoin, it was going to take forever. And it was just not feasible. So he decided to just build it as its own coin. Now, could that technology be retroactively fitted into Bitcoin? It technically could be, probably with a hard fork or something. But it would be contentious, controversial. It might never happen. And the world will benefit from an anonymous money right now.
Now that you mention, I mean, there are some coins where you say, or some tokens where you say, okay, they provide something new, they bring something new to the table and make it different. It's not just a copy clone of Bitcoin. They bring something new, like Ethereum, like Zcash, like Monero, Dash. There's also these storage coins that might be interesting. I know you have looked a lot into these altcoins, and you're also having this platform, Shapeshift, which is extremely popular, integrated in a lot of services these days, a lot of applications. Can you explain to our viewers what Shapeshift is about, and why is it a product everyone should use?
So Shapeshift is an instant exchange for blockchain assets. So it's a way to convert from any leading blockchain asset into any other, right? So Bitcoin to Ethereum, Ethereum to Monero, Zcash to Dogecoin, whatever coins you want. And our innovation, the thing we did differently, was that we don't require any user accounts at all. We don't even have user accounts.
So how does it work? How does it work then?
So it's much like a vending machine, right? If you walk up to a vending machine and you want some candy, you don't have to sign up with an account at the vending machine, right? You put your tokens in, and out comes a candy bar. The machine has an input in the right money. So Shapeshift is very similar. We have an inventory of each coin, and if you give us a Bitcoin and you want a Litecoin, we send that to you right away. So this makes it much faster and more convenient, but it has this added advantage of being a lot safer. And anyone in the Bitcoin world knows about the exchanges that have lost millions of dollars because they got hacked and people had all their money with them. It's been a really big problem in the industry. And as secure as you can make your platform, if it's holding customer money, there's always a risk. Right? So we built an exchange that doesn't hold any customer money.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I like the analogy, Shapeshift is a candy machine.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
It was a pleasure having you here. I think it was a great value for our viewers. Thank you very much, Erik.
Thank you.